kids going?
Hi everyone, Frank the Organic Tank with Mind of Masters here today. It's the Mind of Faber, Mr. Urijah Faber, who I've known for numerous years now, dating back to when he was the World Extreme Cage Fighting Featherweight Champion at the time. That was as the premier world title in all the sport for featherweight. So number one contender many times in the UFC, has fought for the title many times. His book, the Laws of the Ring, is been very, very well received. He's shooting a movie now. Is a guy that you can have a conversation with about anthropology. You can talk about organic food, higher consciousness. Really the kind of guy I like to interview. So Urijah, welcome. Thanks for having us here today.
My pleasure.
So you and I, we always run into each other at Whole Foods in Las Vegas. I know I'm going to see you
salad bar
whenever you're there, and we always wind up talking about who knows what. In this case, as it happened, we started talking about vaccines. Urijah, for many who don't know, I believe you've never been vaccinated as a kid. Your parents, and so you went to Capitol Hill. There was legislation in California. There was a bill to mandate for public schools vaccination for all kids. They wanted to do away with the religious exemption and other exemptions. You went to Capitol Hill. Tell me about why you wanted to go to Capitol Hill. Did you get to speak? Tell us about that experience.
So they were basically dealing with this issue, which is, and I'm not against vaccines in general. I don't, and it wasn't my choice not to be vaccinated. It was my parents' choice. Yep. After they did a bunch of research. So, what they're doing now, and the more I learn about big business, the more I learn about, when I meet people that have huge companies, and I meet different, political people, and I start to understand the world a little bit more, you just realize that sometimes people don't have people's best interests in mind. So that being said, I don't necessarily say no to all vaccines. I haven't done the research yet for myself. When I have kids, I will do the research and decide. But I don't like the idea of them not allowing people to do the research like my parents did, because, it's not a secret that there are side effects, like big side effects to having, vaccinations, etc., which, it's for they say it's for the greater good of like the mass population, but some people just have one kid, and that's their whole, that's their contribution to the human race, and that's what their whole world revolves around. And to have somebody adversely affected by, a vaccination that they don't necessarily have to have in their body is kind of scary. And on that same note, the idea of, if one person shows that they had a kid, maybe they did have these vaccinations, and that child had some sort of adverse side effect, and their next kid is required, no matter what the result of that first vaccination to the first child, they don't have a choice in saying, no, I'm not going to, or otherwise they're kind of cast aside, not allowed to be part of regular society, in my opinion, which has been a huge part of my growing up, being in a school environment, being with other kids and being part of that. So I just feel strongly about giving people a choice to do the research and make some of those decisions themselves. I'm not necessarily saying don't vaccinate. I'm just saying do the research.
Did you get a chance to speak there at Capitol Hill?
I just went up and it was like a long line of people, and I was one of the last ones, and I just said, my name, that I told them I have not been vaccinated, and that I'm against the bill. So I did get up and get to say that.
And for those who don't know, I believe that bill did pass. So there is now a mandate for public schools. They rid it of. I believe the governor has to still sign, I believe.
Right.
So you've never been vaccinated. How do you feel? I guess the question is, because there's never been a study, as of I think 2013, and I believe it still stands. There had never been a study to the CDC that the CDC was aware of, Centers for Disease Control, of the unvaccinated population versus the vaccinated population. And I think a guy like Urijah Faber would be perfect for that kind of study. A guy who's never been vaccinated. How do you feel? You've never been vaccinated. How are you feeling these days?
I feel really good. I'm 36 now, and I'm probably the most intense sport on the planet, and been exposed to a lot of people, been all over the world, from from Singapore and Japan and China and Brazil to the UK and
to Bali, where you got jumped.
Indonesia.
They tried to kill you.
Yeah,
Angry tribe of guys.
Italy. I've been all around the world, and of course, I try to take great care of myself. But
let's talk about the organic. I mean, because what percentage of food you think? By the way, we're going back for 1 second. You got a lot of flack for that vaccine thing, though. On Twitter, you got a lot of backlash. I mean, and maybe the most backlash you've ever gotten. Maybe.
Yeah. Was it Robert Frost, his road less traveled, saying? I mean, I'm not afraid to be who I am, and again, it wasn't my decision not to be vaccinated, but I would like to have that ability to choose, and so I don't really care about what people think when it comes to, like, you can't hang your hat on what other people think, especially people you don't know. So, I mean, half of the people on the internet are just haters anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But I'll just say it how it is. I want to be able to choose what I put in my kids' bodies when I decide to have kids.
You could be the poster boy for organic in MMA. If there is a poster boy for organic, you got the organic tank in jiu-jitsu, but for MMA, this is your guy. What percentage is organic, and why is organic? That was something that was instilled in you as a kid, I believe, by your parents too. Talk about your relationship with food and organic, because that's a representation of your value system too.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say that I'm super, super strict on the organic side. Healthful living is a huge part of my existence. Like, not using much conventional medicine, I should say. Using food as not only fuel but as medicine, is making sure that you feel great. In addition to doing exercise and things like that, trying to eat the best quality of food, and that's where the organic stuff comes in. The best quality of food possible. Whenever I choose to eat something, it's not like I won't have ice cream. I'll just have the best quality of ice cream. So there's a big difference. There's a difference between a salad that's iceberg lettuce and bacon bits and ranch dressing, and a salad that's like full of rich, organic, nutritious foods. And I mean, there's a difference. So it's a big part of my identity. It's been driven in me since I was a little kid about how important it is to be healthy and having this pride of being healthy, etc. And so it's a big part of who I am.
Talk about is this your first movie?
Yeah, this is my first movie where
You got a movie on the horizon.
First movie that I have a big role in.
Yeah, you guys are shooting in September. So, to the extent that you can, I mean, there's some things you can't talk about, but to the extent that you can, tell us about that role. Is acting something you want to do a lot of? I mean, you're 36 now, you can't fight forever. Is acting, you want to be like Ronda, where they're going to do a biopic on her now, she's in Entourage. Is that kind of the blueprint for Urijah beyond this, or?
I have a lot of business stuff going on as well, and I'm looking forward to the future always, and which is funny because that's kind of not the typical way I've lived my life. I've kind of just gone, but as I've gotten smarter and accomplished more, I start to think more about that kind of stuff, and I would like to get into that space a lot, but not just as an actor. I already have a bunch of projects that, just like in the MMA world, I'd like to do a lot of different things. And like, you look at a guy like Wahlberg, or a guy like even Chuck Norris and Sylvester Stallone. These are guys that like make their own path in that world, and so I think
sort
that's
of create a role.
Create
They're not trying to go into the regular.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily trying to go audition for a bunch of stuff. I would like to create some cool things I think would be good for me, and then put the pieces together, like more like a producer role, and probably be in the films as well. But I do want to do that. But I have a lot of other things I'm working on, and it's been fun preparing for this movie. I mean, just like anything, I've got a coach. I'm talking with the director who's giving me a bunch of like.
Who's the director you're working with?
His name's Ian Paff. He's this is his first time doing a feature film, I believe, of this level, and he's actually the writer also, and it's gonna be fun. It's a comedy. It's with Craig Robinson, who's the big guy from Hot Tub Time Machine and from The Office, and This Is the End. So he's a crack up. And I feel like I'm good in there. I'm pretty serious role, but everyone else is having a lot of fun.
Yeah. So I mean, you have your you have your hand in a lot of things. I mean, you're a businessman. You've got real estate in Sacramento, your hometown, where it's like you and Kevin Johnson are the man up there. Yeah, you and KJ. You've got the real estate thing going on. You're in The Ultimate Fighter again, opposite Conor McGregor. You've got a movie. You got books. Talk about that sort of that entrepreneurial spirit and why a lot of guys maybe wait until the tail end of their career. You've been at it with some of that business stuff for a while. Where does that come from, and what sort of books and what helped you form your business philosophies and your business sense? What's helped you make good decisions? Because you've done well for yourself. You've made good decisions. What are there books? Is it did you come from your parents? Who laid the groundwork for that?
I would say the biggest thing that has allowed me to be an entrepreneur, and I think it's just something that's kind of in me, and definitely I have learned from my parents quite a bit, just having unconditional love and support and encouragement, is just not being afraid to try things. Because a lot of people don't even start, and I talk about this in my book, don't even start to try something because of the fears of the unknown. And I'm not afraid to fail. I'm not afraid to ask for help. I'm not afraid to work my butt off. I'm just not afraid. And so if I have an idea, I just run after it. And I've had some big successes and some small failures, and that's part of the life that you live, is someone that takes risks, and I think I definitely learned some of that from my parents. Like, my dad's been a builder contractor since I was young, so he never really had a traditional 9-to-5 job, I wouldn't say. And my mom and my stepdad Tom have started some small businesses, and I watched actually a big aha moment for me was when my parents, my mom and my stepdad Tom, and we were struggling. My mom had my sister who was 13 years younger than I am, so my mom was 38 at the time. She was working at Nordstrom as a sales lady, and my stepdad Tom was working for the city, wearing one of those orange shirts, just working for the city. And we decided to open this tiny little coffee shop. And that coffee shop was called the Morning Glory, and it was funny, it had a coming soon sign on it for a year. The sign faded, we painted it and everything, the sign faded, and was is this thing ever coming? It was coming soon for probably over a year. And it was only, maybe 600 to 900 square feet, maybe even less. And that coffee shop really changed a bunch of stuff for us. It was we all worked our butts off. I mean, there was times when I was in that coffee shop till 11, 12 at night on a school night, and then get up in the morning and go to school. But I mean, it changed the struggle for money for us, and it was really cool to see the culture that we built in there and how it changed just because we put our hard work and made this thing happen. So that was kind of a moment where I have my pop, who's a contractor, always going job to job and has his own schedule, which I liked and I was used to, and my mom and my stepdad that weren't afraid to start this little business. And I mean, that started changing our life a little bit.
You are, by the way, guys, Urijah is a pioneer in MMA. I mean, before, when the little guys, there was a time in MMA where the little guys were just not on the map. Everybody wanted to watch guys fight 155 and above. People were telling Urijah, you got to go up to 155, even though you're nowhere near that weight. You wanted to be Jens Pulver and go fight way above your weight. Urijah was a guy who held his ground, said, no, I'll fight at my weight, which was 145, which really should have been a 135 pounder. So he's a guy who really helped put one of the 2 or 3 guys that put the little guys on the map. And now the little guys, I mean, Conor McGregor, guys, people want to watch the little guys now. Right now, there's more and more.
Yeah, when I think back, it's so funny. I had to be delusional. You know what I mean? When I started in the sport, 2003, it was illegal in California. The UFC had 3 events a year. The lightest weight class, they had just taken out 155, so it was only 170s. And here I am. I just graduated UC Davis with a college degree, and decide to pursue a career in mixed martial arts, which I mean, was bleak. You know,
Yeah.
there was no bigger picture. But for me, I was thinking like, I'm gonna blow up and I'm gonna do all this stuff, and chose this path. I'm busting tables and I'm coaching kids after I'm coaching at UC Davis, where I'm getting paid like $7,000 a year, and just like with my eye on the prize that you don't even know what it is, because you can't go to the UFC.
There was no blueprint. There was no blueprint.
You can't go anywhere.
Yeah.
So got $200 to show up and $200 to win my first fight, and thought that was great, and just took off after that. I was able to sell tickets, so I was selling tickets. My third fight, I was selling tickets up until like right before I fought. I was like collecting money and giving to the promoter and like making sure that this is, and somebody got their T-shirt. And I remember my first fight, I made $200 to show up, $200 to win. My second fight was somewhere around that, but I got like 25% of ticket sales. And then the third fight, I sold like 200 tickets, and I made like almost $3,000 on this one fight. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so much money, And that's when I decided I'm gonna make this, make this thing work. Started Team Alpha Male and started just attacking it.
Yeah, you had a vision before there really wasn't a blueprint. There wasn't a how do you do this. There wasn't any assurance as a little guy that, hey, I'm gonna capitalize. You could have paved the way for other. We see that where there are people who are pioneers and they don't make the money, but they pave the way for the others. That they're the guys who do all the work and whatever, but they're not there at the right time. And you didn't have anybody. It's like, how do you do this? There was nobody to look to. It's like you just had to sort of have faith, have a vision, and you're lucky it worked. You got the goods.
Yeah. Thank goodness for Dana, Lorenzo, and Frank. Those guys fast-tracked our sport. I mean, I don't know if anyone else could have done that, and the way they did, where they took, something that was so far off from mainstream and just fast-tracked it. I remember how excited I was when the Ultimate Fighter started, because it was like we're making headway. I remember how excited we were when it got legalized to fight in California for the first time, and the steps that these guys were taking. I didn't even realize back then why it was happening necessarily, but it was because we have these intelligent guys that have the means to do it, that were passionate about the sport. So thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Let's shift gears for a second, and we'll call this topic understanding women. There are certain people that seem to have certain people tend to have a better understanding of women than others. It's been alleged that Urijah you're a human development major at UC Davis, so you have a little understanding. There's a lot of guys out there. I mean, the age-old, wonder, okay, how do I do better with women? I want to meet more women. I don't seem to do that well. You're a really confident guy. You're a guy who thinks a lot about anthropology and those sorts of things. You kind of have some celebrity status too. What would be your one or two tips for just the average Joe out there? Is, man, I seem to strike out a lot and not do really well with women. Where do you think a lot of guys are coming up short? A couple of one or two things that might help a guy. A little piece of advice.
All right. I'm no specialist, but I'll throw out some good advice. I would say the number one thing is, and I gave some advice to a guy. I mean, guys have asked me for advice on that kind of stuff before. I would say the number one thing is to focus on yourself. Like the things that you want, to focus on making yourself better, etc. I feel like that's attractive to women, is somebody that is like driven, and you hear like the gold diggers or whatever, but there's got to be something attractive. And the same goes for women, of somebody that has like wants and desires and knows what they're going for. And we talk about you talked about books and stuff for the business stuff, but Napoleon Hill, he talks about 2 key ingredients for success, and I think this carries over to dealing with anything, is definiteness of purpose, which is knowing what you're going for and what you're after, and then having a positive mental attitude. And so those 2 things, I think that is attractive for people. And it's hard to fake having a positive mental attitude. It's hard to fake confidence and things
women
like
have
that.
a way of seeing through that. They
They know.
Success.
They're no dummies. I mean, it's like So I would say a guy that is really trying to figure out why, what I can do to help, with women, I would say focus on yourself, figure out what you want to do and like attack it and have some success. And, I think everything else will fall into place.
Great. Now, I've interviewed you many other times when I worked for Ultimate Fighting Championship. One of the things that we would talk about, you were one of the guys who was always like sort of post-it, so you write a lot, you put a lot of your goals in print. You'd wake up, beside your bed, and the first thing you would see is these mantras, or whatever we'll call them, quotes, ideas, things you wanted to do. Are you still doing that? And what's sort of on that list right now? If you're at home, what sort of writings do you have that are around your house now?
I do a lot of that stuff. I write a lot of stuff down. I have a bunch of different books and notepads and things like that. I have sayings that I've had on my wall since I was in college, and some from when I was growing up, because my mom used to put stuff on the fridge and etc. But from a fighting standpoint, and anytime somebody's like, I'm one of those guys like somebody's like, hey, I'm a sports psychologist. I'd like to work with some of the guys. I'd be like, all right. Like, go with me first, and I'll just go like hear what they have to say, etc. And I had a really good experience with a girl, a doctor from our gym actually, Sarah Lynn, and she just talked about, because I had so many different goals. I had like my short-term goals, my long-term goals, of this things and those things and this thing, and I'm like, I was like, I get so overwhelmed because I have so many different things. But when it comes to the fight game, there's things you can control and things you can't control. And that's everything, right? There's the input goals and the output goals. So there's things that you do that you can control in order to get yourself closer to the things that you want but you can't control. Like if I want to be the president of the United States of America, there's other factors in that. You have people at home who have their own visions. You have this, you have that, you have all these different things that are out of your control, but you can do your best. Like I'll shake one person's hand every day, or I'll work on my public speaking every day, or I'll get up in the morning and like tell myself yes I can in the mirror, or whatever it is that you can tangibly do, these input goals to have this thing that you want. And that goes for the fight game, that goes for business and everything else. So I've done a good job of, it's almost like, the input goals are almost like to-do lists, and the goals, like the big goals, like the output goals, are like dreams. So the biggest ingredient for success, in my opinion, is just thinking big. So with each little success I've had, I've just had a larger mindset for what I want next, and that goes into the movies or into the business, etc., etc. But I still write down a lot of the stuff, and I have an idea, I write it down. If I have something I want, I write it down. It's like making it concrete.
What are some of your favorite quotes that you've embraced over the years? What are the foundational, if you only get to take 3 or so with you, what are the ones that really stand out that you like?
Let me see. I like, there's only 2 things that you have to do in life. You have to live, and you have to die, and you have to live until you die, and the rest is up to you. Because that's the truth. You get to make your own path in this world. So, it's a reality that time's going to come to an end for you, and so living in the moment and having fun and enjoying yourself should be like the ultimate goal for in my opinion. So I like that one. If you don't like the direction, the way the river is flowing, then don't jump in. It's kind of like the path less traveled. I remember in I can't remember, maybe 3rd grade, but we looked at the Robert Frost poem in
The Road Less Traveled.
The Road Less Traveled, yeah. And we had to like read the thing and understand it, and then go talk to our parents about it. And then my dad wrote like I can't even remember what it said, and I should have kept it, but I didn't. And my teacher gave that to me and said, hey, you should hold on to that. This is a good message. I think you should hold on to that, what your dad said here. And it was just basically like encouraging you to take that road less traveled. So I like that quite a bit. Fortune favors the bold. Why do some people tiptoe through life so they can arrive at death safely. Being a risk taker, I like that quite a bit. Dream impossible dreams, and those dreams come true, make the next ones more impossible. That was on our refrigerator my whole life growing up. My mom always had that up, so I like that one quite a bit.
Historical figures and characters, not necessarily in fighting, but beyond fighting. Who are some of the stories you've heard of historical characters, maybe even people who aren't famous, that inspired you? What are a couple of those you're like, that person inspires me? Maybe it's a historical figure, maybe it's somebody you just knew growing up, and you're like, what's the story behind that person? Who are the people that inspired you?
Yeah. Of course, I put in a commercial for Metro PCS, but I said Abraham Lincoln.
Okay.
But I like Honest Abe. He was a guy that just kept on getting knocked down. Just knocked down and knocked down. He was actually a grappler, and I think probably somewhat of an MMA type of dude, because they had a competition in his school, and he was the top dog for wrestling or whatever it was at that time.
He was a wrestler, yeah. He was like the wiry wrestler.
Yeah, he was like the wiry wrestler.
6'2",
he was not afraid of a confrontation. So I like that guy.
He had a lot of pent up aggression, all the defeats, all the
Yeah. So, but that guy. He was at a time where stuff was crazy, and they go on and on about all the times he lost, and he lost, and he lost, and he lost, and he just kept on coming. So I need to read his book. Somebody bought me a book of his. I don't really know that much about him, to be honest. Just what I was told.
But you like a dude that just keeps getting knocked down, and he's always getting knocked down.
Another guy that I respect a lot is a guy like Arnold Schwarzenegger. That guy is, comes from a different country, as an immigrant, and just puts his mind to something and achieves it, and then moves on to the next thing and achieves it, and just, you can tell he thinks big and doesn't take no for an answer, just a real kind of alpha.
Yeah, no, coming over with that accent, you just say there's no roles in Hollywood, he creates the whole industry.
He created everything, and then he becomes,
doesn't speak the language, can't understand what he's saying.
Yeah, into politics, and just on and on and on. The guy's a pretty impressive person. Sure.
Let's talk about the purity of fighting. There's something people who don't know fighting look at, it's just barbaric, it's this. But there's a purity there. I call it a meritocracy, where you get exactly out of it. It's not like a who you know business. Who you know doesn't help you when you step inside the cage, right?
Right.
Let's talk about, I guess, I call it also a crystal ball on the character, where you can see what someone's made of very quickly, versus real life where there's a lot of smoke and mirrors and charades. Talk about the purity of fighting and what fighting has taught you about yourself.
Yeah, it is an interesting thing, and I forget, and I think other people forget also, especially this day and age of internet tough guys, etc. And when people see you on the TV, and then they see you in person, there's usually a lot of respect, but there's so many people that forget that the reason why they know my name is because I'm a dangerous person, if I need to be. Mm-hmm. And that is something you can't take away. I've made a living out of, training myself to be able to fight, in my mind, anybody, to the death if I needed to. And that's pure, right? You can't get around that. If in our sport, it's talking only gets you so far, marketing only gets you so far, and you see this all the time with guys that want to come in the gym, and they'll start their YouTube page before they start day one, training. Yeah, they've got them talking here. It happens all the time, man. It's I've had 3 or 4 guys that
they got the marketing plan in full swing before
they got the marketing plan, and then they realize, oh shit! First, I got to get into this class and get beat up by possibly this girl, which happens all the time. A girl like Paige Van Zandt could beat up a bigger guy right now if they were just stepping in a jiu-jitsu class. Then I got to maybe go fight this guy, this amateur kid who's, maybe 17 years old, but has been training since he's 11. And then, there's only so many ways to talk about doing it without actually doing it in our sport. Eventually, you got to fight somebody.
Yeah.
And so then
you can sort of hide in the business for a little bit. You can kind of get jobs and then kind of.
It happens a lot. It's amazing because you see these guys in every industry. There's like the cheerleading coach that talked his way into a position. Now he's like in charge of a bunch of little college chicks throwing him around and stuff like that. And there's
you can't force come your way through fighting.
You can't talk your way into being a stud fighter. The buck is gonna stop with somebody's fist.
Daniel, stop. You might stop. I think we're running out on that one.
Stop.
Yeah, stop that one. I'm gonna